Okay, so for this teaching worksheet, we will be starting on Set 1 algebra. I will say algebra will be quite a huge part, not just for Set 1. So Set 2 is even a bigger part. So there will be algebra that roll over to all other topics. So in this year, you will be doing some angles, you'll be doing area and perimeter. So there will be some amount of algebra, no matter what. So you got to do a bit of mind switch. Try to think in terms of algebra. Okay, we don't do any more model method or that. So if you can relate to algebra, you can try to think of problem solving using algebra. It will be a lot better for secondary school math. Okay, so for the introduction, right, I'm going to show you the introduction first. So first of all, when we do algebra, we will use letters to represent numbers. So in algebra, the letters that we are going to use, the common one will be X. Okay, but you got to notice the way I write my X. So if you look at the way I write my X, I don't write it like this. Okay, because if I write it like this, it looks like the multiplication sign. So we do not want the alphabet to be confused with the multiplication sign. So it's like X is written it in this way. Okay, so I'll show you again. It's like this and like this. Some people will write like this. That's also fine. As long as you are not going to be confused with the multiplication sign. Okay, so X will be a very common algebra alphabets. Okay, Y. Okay, Z. Z will be also a very common algebra alphabet. Okay, but Z can be easily confused if your handwriting is very bad. It can be confused with, so some people, if they write Z, they write it a bit rounded. It looks like the number 2. That's why my habit is I put a dash in the middle. Okay, so Z can be confused with 2. X can be confused with the multiplication sign. Okay, another algebra alphabet that we will always use is the letter T. So if you look at the way I write T, I try not to write like this because it will be confused with the plus sign. Okay, so there will be certain things that we want to write that we didn't want to confuse with numbers or the multiplication or the operation sign. Your handwriting also matters. If you're the kind who don't write properly, you find that maybe your algebra is a bit messy. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to take note. In algebra, we will use alphabets to represent number, but do take note of how you write your alphabets. So I'm just showing some generic one. Along the way, we'll see some more. Okay, sometimes we will have H. Okay, sometimes we will have S. If you have S, you also try to write properly, or else, right, it might look like a 5. Okay, so it all boils down to your handwriting. Okay, so what is the alphabet that we're talking about? Okay, the alphabet is actually a variable. A variable means, right, it can be used. A variable is a number that can take on different values. It can be different values. Okay, that means the algebra can actually represent different numbers. So that's what we're trying to tell you. Okay, a variable can take on different values. The algebra is a variable. So that means, right, the algebra, we can change the algebra to a lot of values. Okay, then the next one. Okay, I'm introducing the terminology first. So for a start, you might feel that there's a lot of terminology. Okay, then the next one, point number 3 will be an algebra expression. Okay, do you realize like both the term algebraic expression? There's other stuff like algebraic equation. So algebraic expression contain the terms that are connected by plus or minus. Okay, so this one is a term. This one is a term. So for this term, right, there is an invisible sign. This is another term. So to me, right, this is an algebraic expression that contain two terms. Two bubble. So there are two bubble. Can you see I bubble them up? So that one is called two terms. And they are connected by plus or minus. Can only be connected by plus or minus. Then in the next one, right, here, algebra, and there's a plus. Here. So there are three bubbles. Do you realize I bubble up the sign and the algebra? So this is like one term. This is one term. Every bubble is one term. So one term will consist of the plus minus and the algebra or number. So this is an algebraic expression. That contain three terms. If you're thinking, the number of terms important? Yes, because later on you'll be rearranging the terms. So if you rearrange terms, you got to rearrange in such a way that after rearranging, you are still getting the same number of terms. Okay, so this is an algebraic expression. It must have a plus minus. So if you don't see a plus minus, there's an invisible plus. Okay, and then of course, we use alphabets in algebra. Take note of the way that we write alphabets. And the alphabet is actually a variable. A variable can have different values. I mean, we can assign different numbers to the algebra. Okay, so that will be the basic foundation first. And I'm going to show you some algebraic notation. So this will be the basic that you need to know. Okay, so we're going to translate words to algebraic expression. So for example, here the first one, x to y. So if I write in algebra, it will be x plus y. Or it can be a y plus x. Apple plus orange is the same as orange plus apple. But when it comes to subtraction, it's not the same. Subtract A from B. That means B will be the main thing that you're going to subtract away A. So it can only be B minus A. It cannot be A minus B. Then it will be wrong. Okay. So take note. Okay, when we talk about multiply H by K. So essentially it's just H times K. But in algebra, we have an invisible way of showing the multiplication. We will just write HK. So when we write HK, it's an unknowing fact that it's a multiplication. That means, right, I can also write KH. So a multiplication sign can be invisible. It's a understood kind of thing. Okay, number 4, if we write a division, so basically T is divided by S. Usually when it is a divide, we will try to write it as a fraction. So this fraction line is like a divide. Okay, so the first 4 will introduce you the 4 operation. How do we translate to algebraic expression? Okay, then subsequently things will get a bit more complex here. So if you look, number 5, you're going to be adding something. You're going to add something to something. So a lot of students will be a bit confused by this part. So when we say quotient, that is like fraction. So I'm going to add the fraction. What fraction is that? The fraction is x over y. I'm going to add the fraction to the square of z. Square of z will be z square. So if they say square root of z, then that will be like this. So if this is the addition, of course, I can write the other way around. Z squared plus x over y. Okay. Now, number 6. 5 more than 1/3 of h. Okay, 1/3 of h is, it can be something like, you think about h divide into 3 portions. 1/3 of something. That means you divide a pizza into 3 sections. So you get 1/3. So commonly we can write a 1/3 h, or you can write it as a h over 3. They are the same thing. So if you choose to write that 1/3 h or h over 3, it is the same thing. When you write as a h over 3, right, there's an invisible number there. H represent 1h. So usually we don't write. So you might find how come a bit weird. There are invisible multiplication. There's also invisible numbers standing beside algebra. Yeah. Okay, later on you explore a little bit more. So 5 more than 1/3 h. The more than is like a plus. So your answer can be 5 plus 1/3 h, or it can be 5 plus h over 3, or it can be h over 3 plus 5, or it can be 1/3 h plus 5. Okay, so there's a lot of possibility. If it all meant the same thing, that's fine. Okay, the last one, when we say a product. So product 5a and 6b. Product is a multiplication. So if we apply the invisible rule, that means, right, it will just be like this. So by writing 2 brackets like this, people know that you are trying to tell them to multiply. Okay. So this one is also a multiply. 6b is also a multiply. So some people will choose to give a simplified answer. So if I do a simplified answer, 5 times 6 is a 30. Then you got to multiply by A, multiply by B. So you can choose to give a simplified answer, or you can just choose a bracket like 5A with a bracket 6B. So that also represents a multiplication. But typically, I will just give a 30AB. So if there's invisible, the multiplication is an invisible operation. So if you don't write, like here you don't write, right? It actually represent multiply. Okay, so that will be the basic notation that you actually need to know. And also, how do you write the algebra? And what's the algebraic expression? And what is called a terms? 1 term, 2 term. How do you count the number of terms? Okay, later on, we'll talk about more different the different kind of terms that we will have. Okay, so that will be the basic that you actually need to know.